Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And what an honor to bring back a friend of the program. A guy who's been creating sonically, expanding sonically, stretching people's ears out for the last 4 or 5 decades. On top of that, he's also a gifted figure skater and a doctor in psychiatry. He somehow did all of this amidst creating new vocabulary and melodic improvisation. No easy feat, but he did come about. It did come about because of the environment that he was part of, and that has a lot to do with the vibe. The music grows when the vibe is there. Eddie Henderson, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
No, it's my pleasure to be here, Jake.
It's an honor to talk to you, brother. I do want to, taking out of theory for a minute, your band, the bands with Hadley and Black and the bands with Woody Shaw, and then ultimately your collaborations with Herbie, that grew out of an environment that you created. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about how the environment and the vibe go with sonic expansion. I mean, to me, if you go to a club and you sit there and you're supposed to, you've been trained to sit there and look at somebody show tremendous facility on their apparatus, it's not really what it's about. It's really more about what was happening at the London House when you were there, when waitresses would come. I believe Julian told me, Priester said, waitresses were coming up to patrons when you guys were there saying, shh, can you please be quiet until the song is over, right? It's a vibe. Can you talk about the vibe and how that vibe helped you guys grow vocabulary?
Well, with that band, the Mwandishi Sextet, was a very special band. The chemistry of it, personally and musically, was something very unique at that particular time. It was from like 1970 to 73, and a lot was going on sociologically in the world, especially in America. A lot of racial turmoil and all that kind of stuff. And I think in any society, the music of that society reflects what's going on in the society at that particular time. But this particular band was evolved out of things that came from the past, like from the Miles Davis Bitches Brew type of thing, and the avant-garde music of John Coltrane. It evolved from that, and this particular band, the Mwandishi Sextet, like I said, was so unique, and that it incorporated all those aspects of things from the past and brought it right to the forefront and sort of encompassed what was going on. The racial turmoil, the revolutions that were going on. It was right at the forefront of society, and it was reflective through the music that was created. It was right at the cutting edge of creativity.
Were you friends with, or did you play concerts for? I guess what I'm saying is this: I'm looking right now in 2017 as a Gen Xer, and we still have we're still roiling in our own.
No, absolutely.
So what I'm saying, the music was right there alongside. So, did you know the Panthers at that time? Did you play rallies for the Panthers?
I knew on the original. I never did. I don't think anybody ever did in the band go to the Panther rallies. However, Angela Davis on the first Mwandishi record, one of the tunes, Ostinato, was dedicated to her movement at that time. Angela Davis.
Oh, absolutely. Well, this is important. Can you explain? How that movement tied into the messages of what the music you were trying to do?
Well, like I said, in every society, music is reflective of what's happening, going on in that society. and
Right.
at that time that the Mwandishi group, the advent of the Mwandishi group, it was all this racial turmoil, the Black Panthers, Huey Newton, Angela Davis, the rise of black power, so to speak. And everybody in the band was wearing dashikis, afros, and stuff, reflective of the movement. Even though we didn't go to Black Panther meetings, on the first album called Mwandishi, one of the tunes was called Theme for Angela, meaning Angela Davis. So we were more or less like musical spokesmen of the revolution, so to speak. It was a musical revolution, opening people's eyes to the possibilities of creativity, and also hand in hand with what was going on in society against oppression of black people at that time.
This is very well articulated, Eddie. I just to single out Angela. She was doing, what was she specifically, as opposed to the Panthers? What was she? I mean, was she teaching? Was she a professor at that? What was she doing? What was her main?
I really don't know. I never met her.
Okay.
I only saw her sort of in the periphery, like a racehorse, and see with blinders on. Everybody in that band was just so focused in the music. I really didn't have time to look elsewhere because that was our full-time job.
But being that you're an educated cat. I mean, for you were not necessarily tapped into what they were doing, because that doesn't speak to.
Well, at that particular time, everybody in the Mwandishi band was really attuned to spiritual endeavors. We were reading books on spiritual evolvement to help us grow and have our music more spiritual. We just happened to be parallel in time to the movement that was going on, and not necessarily following those movements of the Black Panthers. We I'm sure that they weren't following the Mwandishi music. You know what I mean?
No, I did. This is so important, though.
Yeah.
Could you talk about?
I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah. Well, no, because you're doing it great. What's missing today, in these new movements, is a spiritual musical component to it.
Yeah,
not that you were playing right alongside of it, but it was this idea of saying, wow, this is more than verbal words. This is more than protest. This is a spiritual awakening. That's not there today. Yeah.
I mean, during the daytime, everybody in the Mwandishi band would read the same spiritual books, and incidentally, some of these books were the same books that Coltrane was reading during his evolution and spiritual quest musically.
Which books were they?
One was The Impersonal Life.
This is great.
Was some of the teachings of Buddha, the life of Christ. The Science of the Mind. That dealt with all aspects of spirituality and religiosity too.
Everybody at the same
time was reading the same book while during the day would be practicing, studying, and then going and trying to manifest it through the music at night.
So you talked about when the conception Mwandishi came along, and it was an acoustic band, but when you said you borrowed from Bitches Brew, Miles, and also Coltrane.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you talk first about the components of that music that Coltrane was making that you borrowed, and then talk about the elements of the music from Bitches Brew that you borrowed, and how you made your own twist on it with Mwandishi.
Exactly. A lot like I think Coltrane inspired everybody individually in the band, but he passed in 1967. We didn't start until 1970. But Bitches Brew was in that interim, and that I think the music from Bitches Brew kind of influenced the direction that wide open spaces that the Mwandishi band sort of went for, rather than bogged down by just chord changes going around, playing the same chord changes.
I dig. Open spaces. Open spaces.
Oh, exactly. That kind of a concept, and the Coltrane aspect of it, the avant-garde part of it, it was almost like looking out into the infinite, and every night it was something different. We couldn't wait to get to the gig because we know we'd go into the infinite voids somewhere, and in the beginning, the whole Mwandishi group, when initially started as three horn, trombone, flugelhorn, and reed section, but we were all acoustic in the very beginning, and until like the last year of the Mwandishi group, when Patrick Gleason came and added on his electronic enhancement, and then it just really opened up to another dimension. So sort of like Star Trek 2.
Well, no, you would say that. I mean, Herbie wasn't playing an acoustic upright piano, though. I mean, he was playing an electric piano.
Well, he would play both. Herbie, on some tunes he would play acoustic, and then some he would play electric. Sometimes he played both at the same time.
This is the. I'm producing a documentary on Stan Getz, and what I've in my research, it was Miles and him and Dizzy and at the birth of the cool. But your stepfather, who was kind of an adversarial character in your life, and
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
You sort of thrived on that to a degree. He took you to those.
Well, he was a doctor to all the iconic jazz musicians and notables of his day. He was Billie Holiday's doctor. He was Coltrane's doctor. He was Count Basie's doctor. Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, Cannonball, Oscar Peterson, Sarah Vaughan. He loved jazz music, and so he took me to all these people. From the time he was my stepfather. And so from the time I met him at age 14, he would take me to the Black Hawk in San Francisco. So I got exposed to all that music, all these notables, Dizzy Gillespie, they would all come over the house. I just thought they were normal people.
Well, no, you told some incredible stories, but I guess here's what I'm trying to get at is that I've been talking to Stan's wife, and that Birth of the Cool period, they turned their back on the audience because they were ashamed of monetization. They were ashamed of the money. They only cared about the art. The art. Do you remember Miles at the Black Hawk turning his back? Why? I want Eddie. This is the spouse of Stan Getz. I want to know why Eddie Henderson. Why did those cats turn their backs on the audience? Because I think my feeling is that, listen, and this is just coming from a 39-year-old, is that they, some people might consider that rude. I just think that they wanted to get collectively in a zone, and they wanted to create art, and they were not interested in.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jake.
Yeah.
Like Miles Davis, knowing him as I did, he wasn't concerned with I'll give it a parallel example, or the opposite of like Louis Armstrong smiling and grinning and catering to the audience. Of course, Louis Armstrong was a wonderful artist, but Miles took a different approach. He wanted to get into the fabric of the music itself and not be distracted by the audiences, whether they were smiling or clapping or not. He just wanted to get into the essence of the real creative aspect of his musical endeavor without being distracted by applause. And his voice, where he had a problem, he had a vocal cord tumor, so his voice was very raspy. So I think he was self-conscious. So that's why he never talked,
Interesting.
or announced. Yeah.
But why was it? I mean, to me, as a member of the audience, like, were you live and you would see Miles turn his back, and how would you be like, wow, this is cool? Because I don't understand why people would get, especially if it's melodic improvisation, instrumental.
Oh yeah.
Why would you get offended by that?
It didn't bother me. It did, whether he turned his back or not, just those sounds that were coming out, even from his back, was thrilling. and just the way he moved, it was almost like he was walking on air. Just when he walked on the bandstand, just his presence that he commanded, whether you saw the front, the side, or the back of him, was such a mysterious event. It's beyond. I mean, just talking about it gives me chills. But it impressed me when I was just a teenager, just seeing him. Whether he had his back to me, or the front, or the side, or whatever. Even when he was in the room, you could feel it.
This is the other thing for you, and it's so great to connect with you again. I found this album. There's a Stan Getz and Bill Evans from '63, and so this is before Girl from Ipanema. But like in the liner notes, the rhythm section for the record is Tommy Flanagan, Elvin, and Ron C. So it's like,
oh my God,
yeah. So it's an amazing album, and
I'm sure
it's just great. But in the back of the liner notes, Eddie, it's like it makes me cringe because if I was a journalist at that time, I'm petrified that I would have said exactly what this guy from Downbeat said, which was
what he said.
He said this. He said, because at the time, '63, this is Coltrane's still alive. He's beginning to channel that vision, that inspiration, that modal music, so basically they said, here's Stan Getz, melodic, beautiful melodies, lilting, pretty, and then juxtapose that to Archie Shepp and Coltrane with this quote unquote angry message music.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So who drove that? I mean, I need you to break this down.
Magazines that they characterize as Coltrane angry black music, and they even characterized in Downbeat magazine Charlie Parker junky N-word music.
Really? Really?
And they characterized Clifford Brown as a mouthful of mush. I mean, Jesus Christ, give me a break.
Give me a break. And you're talking about when these guys are alive and reading this stuff. I mean, they're
yes.
That's unbelievable.
And the shame is that those critics, with a stroke of their pen, they can ruin people's livelihood, the creative musician's livelihood, because of their own personal opinion or prejudice or whatever, and then that's. And I always say critics are just frustrated musicians.
Well, I mean, I can tell you. I mean, critics. That whole. I guess the idea was there. Is it just this idea of being uncomfortable watching somebody? Again, going back to this idea of this inferiority complex of white people, where it's like they are seeing other cats. I mean, Jimmy Cobb, when I interviewed him, he said literally that when Train started to do what he was doing, there would be women, assuming upper, relatively, white women saying, "Make him stop, make him stop."
Oh, yeah. I actually saw that. People would walk out and say, "Boo,"
Boo.
Yeah, boo. When I was a teen, when Coltrane first started his band, even when he was in Miles, they used to tell Miles, "Get somebody else. He sounds horrible." It sounds gorgeous to me, but just people's, they're so accustomed to hear what's pleasant to their ears, don't want to hear anything new. That's just their incapacity to look past their nose.
What was talking to some cats, they'd say about, Coltrane would say Coltrane and Stan were very tight. Stan loved a lot of those.
Yeah,
they had great.
absolutely.
So that divide was only made by critics. But was there?
Absolutely.
But it was. I talked to the skipper Henry Franklin, and his first response when I told him, he's like, I've always been a Coltrane guy. Was there kind of like this like split? But Stan was winning downbeat when he lived in the States. Not that he didn't deserve it, but he was winning them over Sonny Rollins or John year after year after year. So was there this like pretty boy? This is safe.
Of course. Well, the racism came into it. That's like when Paul Desmond won it over Cannonball.
Wow.
Because of Take Five.
Right. Yeah, so it's so revelatory. This is so revelatory. He won it over Take Five. How?
Yeah.
Someone like Cannonball, what would Cannonball, like if you were with Cannonball, not that he would resent it, but what would he say to that? Like you guys would laugh about it?
Well, I was a teenager when it happened, and Cannonball was at my stepfather's house, and opened the downbeat and saw that, and Cannonball just laughed and said, "Oh, that's some white BS," quote unquote. I heard that come out of his mouth, but he just laughed, with cynicism.
Well, see that cynicism. Now look where we are today and how cynical we are now. Where we are at
exactly.
now. It's
exactly.
really pretty remarkable, man. From a
exactly.
Would you? This is sort of veering off, but I am not a medical doctor, psychiatrist, but I understand the destructive nature of this president, but have you been able to clinically figure out what he's mentally ill, and that's part of the issue? And do we know what he did?
Even if I was not a medical, first let me clear up a misnomer.
Yeah.
I'm a medical doctor and did a residency in psychiatry. However, I never practiced psychiatry. I only practiced general medicine. It's publicized that I'm a practicing psychiatrist. No, I'm a medical doctor who just did a psychiatric residency.
What's general medicine, though? What does that mean?
Well, I finished medical school and I practiced medicine.
So you administered medicine to people and things like that. You weren't a private practice psychiatrist.
Yes, yeah. No, a private medical practice.
Right. Okay. So, but anyway, but you have
though I did specialize in psychiatry, I'm a psychiatrist also, but I never practiced psychiatry in private practice. I only practiced general medicine.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Only reason I went to psychiatry because the on-call schedule was once every 45 days as opposed to once every other day for 4 years. So that gave me more time to play music.
Absolutely. It was genius. And I think you were actually in school with Denny Zeitlin at that time, right?
Well, he was my advisor.
Denny was your advisor. He was your advisor.
Yeah, when I was doing my psychiatric residency. And so when at the end, when I joined Herbie Hancock and Mwandishi, Denny said, how did I make that decision? That's what he really wanted to do, but he was so entrenched in his psychiatric practice, teaching at the medical school, the psychiatric students, and his private practice. And he was always playing, but he was too bogged down in his practice and couldn't leave. So I told him I had no choice. I would hate myself for the rest of my life if I didn't go with Herbie Hancock.
Absolutely.
So he just sort of smiled.
Go back to this president, because he does have. It's way beyond that. What do you look at? What are the characteristics that you're seeing as far as mental illness is concerned?
Oh, in terms of Trump?
Yeah.
A narcissist, an egomaniac.
What is it like with somebody when they you're in the room with them and they go ballistic on you, and the next day they don't remember anything they said to you? Or they're like lack of empathy.
Well, he's so used to everybody catering to him because of his money,
right.
And then his MO is if he's caught wrong, he will never admit he's wrong. He'll just change the subject and cause some other major turmoil. So from one day, every day, it's a different,
right.
new set of rules. and so it's hard to keep track. But it's a major travesty every day, and something's wrong, in my opinion, with him.
Well,
and a lot of major psychiatrists all over the country who teach in medical schools and in psychiatry, they say he's out of his mind.
He's clinically out. I mean, if you in your practices you run across somebody who cannot ever admit fault, who does diversionary tactics.
Psychopath.
Psychopath. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, but with no guilt about it. That's to me a person who does has behavior that's against society with no guilt.
How has he? I mean, the simple answer is he has tons of money, but he, as far as I know, he's. I mean, again, totally unethical treatment of women.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's never actually. He's never been in jail. I don't understand how he's avoided that. I mean, as far as he's never actually. When I think of psychopath, I think of some stalker, killer, murderer.
Right.
Not.
But psychopaths can go to jail if they break the law. But I'm sure he's broken the law, but probably paid off.
Absolutely. Well, he's always been in the private sector. Yeah. Well, you're nailing.
Yeah, the private sector, exactly.
Where do you think? Yeah. I mean, at this point, you talk. I wanted to go back also. You talked about Bitches Brew. Now, Bitches Brew had the great drummer Rick Marotta told me. I mean, it was almost like rats chasing cheese because he. I mean, at one point it was like. Michael Moore on upright, Harvey Brooks on electric, DeJohnette. This is the band. But
yeah, Lenny White also. Lenny White.
Oh, Lenny. Well, and that's right. But what I want to get at is this idea of were you guys influenced by the Plug Nickel sessions with Tony and Ron? Because
I love that record.
Because you know what? To a lot of cats who. Tommy Coster from Santana, who's a jazz player.
Right.
He said that was the first time when they play My Funny Valentine, and they break up the time and they break up the form.
Right.
And
right.
And that was before Bitches Brew, right? I mean that
was.
So can you talk about when you first heard that and how invigorating that was for you?
Oh, it was so far over my head because they played My Funny Valentine. And they like quadruple the time, you know. and I remember when I was in medical school, and Miles came with Ron, Tootie, Herbie, and Wayne, and they played it, and I was standing at the bar, and they were like quadrupling the time, and then Miles just sang in my ear, "Is your figure less than Greek?" Like, he knew exactly where they were, and I just said, "Jesus Christ!"
Oh my!
And he just chuckled and smiled at me.
Is your figure less than Greek?
Yeah, no, like that's the bridge or the middle section in the song.
Oh, I did. I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah. And he knew right where they were.
He knew right where they were in the tune. I had no idea, but he heard it, you know.
But I mean, in terms of like, you know, that's really the question I have for you is, what band did, and before Mwandishi, this is the critical thing because a lot of people now, when did you learn to keep your own internal time and not rely on the rhythm section to keep time, and so that you allow rhythm section to play melodically? Was there a time? I mean, I know you played with Black, but he's not a trap drummer. I
played with Black. I played with Art Blake. Worked with Art Blakey.
You worked with Blake?
With Elvin Jones.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So where did you learn?
It was a cumulative thing, and then I worked with the Mwandishi group. Then I worked with Philly Joe Jones just on 2 gigs. And so with all the major drummers and actually major bands, the ones I just mentioned, the Messengers, Elvin Jones, work with McCoy Tyners, big band and small group. So it's just a progressive, cumulative thing that happens. It just doesn't happen overnight or just like listening to one record. It happens, over year after year. It just becomes part of a musician's innate musical being from experience with being in different contexts of musical events.
Well, I mean, but okay. Well, I want to play you this clip of. I did an interview with this cat, two interviews with this cat. I want you to take a listen to him. He's a good buddy of yours, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay.
Okay.
What I'm really referring to was the advent of cool jazz. When cool jazz became the popular music, I guess as a result of Miles Davis doing the recording Birth, what does he call it?
Birth of the Cool, yeah.
Yeah, Birth of the Cool, yes.
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah.
And so the attention, the record companies jumped on that new product. It was popular. When you turn on the radio, all of the disc jockeys were playing the West Coast inspired cool jazz. That's what they called it. And bebop was ignored. Okay, now that caused a lot of anger. The beboppers were irate in the condition they found themselves in. They weren't being sought after to record or perform. Some of the well-known ones were, but the up-and-coming beboppers like myself, we had little choice. We had to really exercise our kind of stubborn stick-to-it-ness to stick to our dream of playing music that was true to our heritage, the music of that was started actually back in the beginning. Louis Armstrong and his mentor. I'm having a senior moment.
No,
here.
you're doing great. I want to know. This is so important. You're nailing this, by the way. So don't even. All right, Mr. Henderson. Who is that?
I kind of recognize the voice, but I was trying to pinpoint.
Yeah, no, it was your boy Julian Priester.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Can you, and this is
I recognized him.
And this is, we had a ball. We did a couple of.
Oh, he's very articulate.
Well, he's a cat, man, and
he played with everybody. He played with Duke Ellington.
He played with Sun Ra. Well, no, but he
Max
was talking
Roach,
about Sun Ra in the 50s.
He played with Sun Ra. He played he played with the whole spectrum.
He did, and he talked about this idea of bebop and how I mean, can you riff on what he was talking about?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that?
Because a lot of the so-called beboppers, when I say music, like the Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie invented, felt really slighted when the Birth of the Cool came in, and that started getting more attention than the bebop idiom, and even to this day, a lot of staunch beboppers kind of resent any change. They want to hold the baton.
It's like, but how? I mean, the vocabulary. You can't grow vocabulary in music, man. You got to. I mean, come on. I mean, that was.
You have to pass the baton. But a lot of very good players. I'm not going to mention names. They just don't want to get. They want everything to stay in bebop. Come on, that was 1940s and 50s. This is 2017, for Christ's sake.
Oh my God!
You know what I mean?
Well, but I mean, so I know, because listen, I see, you're not a new media cat, but you're on the bandstand at Smoke. I see you're teaching at Juilliard. I mean, how have you tried to, like, almost in a nonverbal on the bandstand way of saying, let's move on and create new vocabulary, or at least present the music in a new format. Or I mean, I know you've been doing, but how in 2017? Where are the seeds being planted for new growth in vocabulary?
Well, I try to go out and listen to young players and see what they're doing, and then just try to transfer it, mute it, and try to fuse it into things that I have done in the past, and try to increase my vocabulary too, because I certainly don't want to be playing the same way
right.
as I did
right.
way back when I was with the Mwandishi group. And in fact, just let me correct one more other thing. I'm not at Juilliard anymore. I haven't been there for a year and a half.
That's how long we haven't talked
Oberlin.
for. Yeah, no, that's how long. That was the last interview you were at. That you were there with Billy Hart.
Right.
You were talking about bringing records in and doing that stuff.
Yeah. I'm in Oberlin now. I've been there for 4 years. That's in Ohio.
Wow. Are you and Bartz are down there?
Yeah, me, Bartz, Billy Hart, and Robin Eubanks. We're all at Oberlin.
What are you? So collectively, when you guys come together, what is the overarching spiritual goal of being able to help these kids unlock their ears and feel the music? What do you guys talk about? What kind of like community of music is there so that
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I try to do, I think, with every the people I mentioned, because we're traveling professors there. Well, I would go there like 2 days a week. Billy Hart also, Robin Eubanks, and Gary Bartz, because we don't live in Ohio. So what I try to do, I can only speak for myself candidly, is my trumpet students, I'm the only trumpet teacher there, I try to first teach them how to play the instrument, the mechanics of how to play the trumpet, because music is a language, and you cannot speak any language unless you know the building blocks of a language. First, you got to know how to make a sound. You have to know the mechanism of the instrument before you can express a musical idea you have in your mind. So first I had to go through technical exercises out of the technical book, just like any classical teacher would do. Then I teach them, ask them to listen to their favorites and expose them to the people that I was exposed to, Miles Davis, Clifford Brown, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, Booker Little, Woody Shaw, Freddie Hubbard, Lee Morgan, to try to get them to transcribe some of those solos, and then see what they're doing also, and try to, because if this isn't done, this musical idiom called jazz will become extinct if you don't bring up the younger generations into appreciating, the importance of this, tradition.
I want to read you. I want you to extrapolate this on the trumpet, but I've connected with Charlie Neville, and he said to me, Sonny Stitt told me years ago, man, you got to know your horn. I said, what do you mean I have to know? Yeah. I have to know my horn. He said, you got to learn all the scales. I told him, I don't. Oh,
absolutely.
No, but he said, I don't want to play He said, I don't want to play no scales. I want to play bebop. He said, look.
Oh no.
He said the instrument is constructed based on scales. There's nothing. Nothing that you can't play that doesn't come from the scale. How can you get to play in any key? You learn all the scales.
Yeah.
So when did you begin to learn? That's the other part. Do the cats today? Can they play? You ask them to play a standard tune in every key. Jackie Byard used to do that to cats, and they'd fall apart. And then he'd say, "Okay, that's your lesson for the week. Now you know what you have to work on." Did you have lessons like that?
Right. But going back to what you asked me. My first lessons, I learned play a C major scale, then play a C sharp major scale, then the D major scale, go through all the 12 tones, then play its associated relative minor, then play your diminished scales, then play your whole tone scale in every key.
Right.
So you can't improvise. You get a musical idea, but if you don't know the scale, you nobody benefits.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're talking. So, I mean, because Bart's told me kids today, their ears are locked, and if you're giving them, check out this Booker Little or Clifford Brown, transcribe it. They're just going to be able to play that as opposed to
exactly, absolutely.
So how do you get them to stretch? Yeah,
I asked them to transcribe it. They may transcribe it or not, but if they do transcribe it, when that transcription is over, they're dead in the water.
Exactly. They're only playing that.
Yeah, they're only playing that, and that's just off the top of.
So is that sort of the $25 million question as to how Because, or do you say to them, because that's what Charles Neville was saying when he would go and play. He'd listen to all those Sonny Stitt records because him and Train were doing similar parallel stuff for a while.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, once he copied all of Sonny's stuff, he ran out of it. He had no bag left. He had,
exactly.
So it's like, how do you get them, especially because you're a transient professor, you're not there full time. How do these cats have any chance to really, get up and figure out their own vocabulary? Do they get to play live and you get to hear?
Yeah, they do have ensembles where they play live, and I go listen to them and I critique them and ask them to critique themselves. But I always try to have it in their head that they have to know what they're doing. A lot of kids don't want to learn how to read and don't want to learn the scales. Well, I play by ear. I said, elephants have ears, but knowledge enhances all gifts,
Talking to Eddie Henderson here on the Jake Feinberg Show. So can you talk a little bit about your performance schedule? What kind of gigs do you? Has jazz? I hate the word, but has melodic improvisation reached a point now where it's? I just remember a lot of cats who were playing gigs when you were on the West Coast and they were on the East Coast and they were playing the half note for $12 a week, and eventually. They went in and became studio sharks to make a living, and they felt that truly that jazz kind of became an inside joke for jazz musicians. People were unable to tap their foot to it after a while. They got lost, and I'm just wondering.
Well, I disagree with that totally.
Okay, go ahead.
I've heard people say that, but in my experience, jazz is live and well, and it's really like open skies, infinite possibilities of creativity within that universe. It's not dead by any means. And what I've been doing lately, I just finished 2 weeks ago. I was at Smoke for 3 days, and then this last weekend I was there for 3 days with Carl Allen, the drummer, and Vincent Herring playing the music of Art Blakey and Elvin Jones. And then in a week, I'm supposed to do another album for Smoke that I was have been rehearsing for with the group. It's going to be Kenny Barron, Mike Clark on drums, and Elliott on bass,
wow,
and Donald Harrison on alto from New Orleans. Playing all new original compositions, some revamped old, not old tunes, but well-known tunes, but with a different twist to it. But quite a few new compositions to an originals, and I'm really looking for. That's supposed to be done the 31st of this month. New recording of mine, and then after that I'm still playing with the Cookers, that all-star group with Billy Harper, Donald Harrison, myself, Billy Hart, George Cables, and Cecil McBee, and David Weiss. We've been together about 10 years, and we're going to California and Salt Lake City this coming Saturday. But we've been together a little over 10 years, and we work about 4 to 5 months a year. So jazz is not dead.
Jazz is okay, but I want to ask you: jazz is not dead for all the cats you just mentioned? Harrison, Clark,
right.
Barron, Eddie Henderson. You guys came up when there was a record industry. Your individuality was out front, so you have a legacy, okay? But for younger cats, is there a loft scene? Is there a Fillmore district? And is there the places where these cats can go? And because dude, we just live in a more punitive society now. Merle Haggard Merle Haggard was in the hole at San Quentin, and he was cutting top 10 hit records. So, and he was getting out of jail. And the point is that you had the Happy House. This I'm sure you went there. It was in San Francisco where they they housed musicians. This wonderful couple. They had. Let me get the quote up here. Here, I want to just read it to you. But it's like, I mean, did you go do cats that don't have an identity? What is the future for them? I mean, I know
I do worry about that because I see all these kids coming out of Juilliard, coming out of Oberlin, and all these music facilities all around the country and all around the world, jazz schools, and then when I look around at even for well-known musicians, it's difficult to make a living, but all these kids who have no records, because the record companies, that industry is kind of dying.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you make your own stuff now, but it doesn't get out, and there's no regional radio to play it.
Exactly, right. And there's no circuit anymore for musicians to travel. It used to be the northern route and the southern route to travel across country. Now you have to make these big jumps from New York to California, and the airfares eat up the whole budget. But going back to the point of young musicians coming out with no name, no resume of who they played with to get a gig,
right?
It's really, it would be discouraging.
I mean, you play 3 nights at Smoke because those are heavy names. That's about the limit now, 3 to 4 nights. Whereas you were Lenny White, Blakey,
and you can't make a living like that.
No. So I'm saying you just sort of talked out of very eloquently about the future is bright, and now you're also saying
I said that with tongue in cheek.
Exactly. Well, I'm just saying, what do you got? What do you see? Bart's and Eubanks? What do you guys talk about as the seeds for future? Like when we're gone from this earth, like where are where are the portals? And will this music actually?
Question.
The other part is this. What's interesting is, because we know Johnny Griffin and Dexter and all those cats, they left for Europe. But the question is, even though we're in the midst of this insanity in this country right now, and the world is insane, do you think that this music that you've played for so many decades will actually become consumed in this country at some point?
That's the $64,000 question.
Judging by our conversation, it's always been a struggle, but it's just as we become
the truth has always been oppressed throughout history on any level.
Yep. That's why I do my show.
But that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought this up, and I always ask my students, what are your goals? Why are you into music for fame and fortune, or you're in it for the love of the art form itself? Because if you're just in for fame or fortune, you might be in for a big, acute, psychotic depression.
I think, but I mean, like, do they really know? Do they know what the calling? Do they have the calling? That's the thing.
Some of them, I would say the minority, really have the calling. The majority of them really, they're young kids, and it looks glamorous to them. Oh wow, all the color. They go to a club and see the names up there and the colored lights and stuff. That's how I saw. When I first started, I saw Miles Davis, Coltrane. Wow, what a glamorous life. It's not that glamorous when you live every day.
Well, no, and the other thing is this. My last, we've been all over the place, but this is the one thing I want you to riff on. I went out, had a chance to connect with Ndugu Chancellor out in L.A.
Oh, that's my friend.
And great cat. And he would and this is interesting because you're in academia. And again, one of the differences is that, and I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush, but a lot of cats that are going, if you're trying to learn this music in academia, chances are you've probably grown up in not affluent, but you've had resources. You've had things, okay? So Ndugu was saying he's at USC, and what he sees is cats coming in on scholarship or paying full
Right.
ride. So these guys are
Right.
very well off financially. They sort of are a different sphere, and they play. So they play together. They have jams together, and they play together. But he says there's a lack of willingness for those cats to go find the cats playing with the rubber bands on their horns. To go find okay, so because you had that with
I totally concur with that.
because you were rocking that, and so there's this divide, this class situation going on where why don't you go down and play with the Rossan Roland Kirks, or why don't you go play with the Bishop Norm? I mean, not talk about
Bishop Norman Williams.
Bishop. I mean, I'm serious, man. I mean, what I'm saying is like that was the beauty of it, is that it was like to me there's a class issue too, where you have these cats in academia who are like, well, no, we're just playing together. I don't want to play with these guys that have rubber bands on their horns. That's beneath, you know. So what do you say to that?
Clark could play with people in the street.
Exactly.
I
mean, So what do you say to? I mean, what do you? Do you sense that elitism? I mean, or how do you connect those two? Because you got to have jazz is a street music, man. And like Larry Willis was like, dude, when you stifle the culture and push it off the street, man, that's how you get another Hitler.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up on this show.
There's no necessarily. I'm not looking for an answer, but do you see that divide? That's the.
I haven't thought about it until you brought it up.
Wow.
But I see it.
Ndugu, for the record, Ndugu brought it up because he sees it at USC all the time. He says,
I see it at Oberlin and at Juilliard.
So I mean, these are the questions. I'm looking to hold a Facebook Live summit with you and Bart's at some point.
I would love to.
All right, so let's just make that happen. We'll be in touch about it because I you know what it is, man. I really need you guys to. Even if you can't see the future, be prophetic and throw out some avant-garde stuff to inspire.
I would love to.
And try to bridge the gap here, man, because we did it before. We just, and it can be done.
It can be done again. It can be done again.
Much love, Henderson.
Well, count me in, please.
All right, I'll get, and
I love this interview too.
Oh, we're cooking, man. No, I've grown a lot since I last talked. So I mean, I'll.
This not the interview, it's conversation.
Yeah, no, we're just having a jam, man. No, listen. Much love. We'll be in touch, and we'll try to put something together like that.
Thanks so much to you too, bro.
Later on, Eddie.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Amazing musician, better human being, the enlightened Eddie Henderson. And we'll be back in a little while with the new swim coach of the JCC, Thomas Meek, after this.